This is the Oakwyn Podcast, featuring Morgan Brown and Michael Yeung.
Welcome to the Oakwyn Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Yeung.
And I'm Jenny Woon.
And we have a very special guest, Michael Yeung. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me, you two.
Thank you for being here. And Jenny's a special co-host today.
Yes, thanks for having me on as well.
Yeah. A much requested co-host. Yeah.
I often, you do get me asking a lot, right?
Yeah.
And then I often can't make it all the time. Every time you ask.
Right.
But this is maybe my fourth or fifth time on.
Yeah, and she's awesome. But let's focus on Michael. So, Michael.
Pressure.
Yeah. I do like to put people on the spotlight. So how you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't you share a little bit of background? Tell us a little bit of your story and how you got into real estate.
Yeah. So, real estate wasn't really first on my mind of things to do as a profession. I went back to BCIT in 2008, so 2008 to just finish up my degree.
Okay.
And graduated in 2011. And after that, went into corporate world. So worked at logistics and other occupations there. Yeah, communications. And after transitioning a few different times into different careers, most recently before real estate was in the restaurant industry.
Oh, okay.
I found that the long hours, the late hours, it was really starting to catch up on me. Just didn't feel like it was something I could sustain in the long run. So my brother, who's already a realtor, and he'd been a realtor for a number of years at that time, had been kind of dropping little nuggets to me and suggesting, hey, had you consider real estate? I think you'd be really good at it. And for me, I never knew what being self-employed was, working for yourself, having your own business. I always just thought I've got to get a good education, get a good job, and just get a steady paycheck. And after 4 years in the restaurant business, I decided, maybe this is the time in 2016, 2017, maybe this is the time to explore what real estate is. And so that's how I started getting into it. I started working with my brother as an unlicensed assistant.
Oh, okay.
Wait, Michael, did he not tell you about the late nights?
No, he did not tell me anything about any night. He was just, working away, plugging away, obviously long hours, mostly in the day. But, the market at that time, between 2012 and, 2015, 16 was doing pretty good. So I just thought, let's give it a shot. Let's see what it's about, and helped him out a little bit with his documents and such, and was like, I think I could do this. So, went and did my course at UBC and got licensed in 2018.
So how was it to be, in a family kind of environment? Tell us about that introduction. Were you and your brother ever working together in the past? What's that dynamic like?
My brother and I, growing up, had a really awesome relationship.
Okay.
I look up to him for a lot of things in my life. And, he's about 5 years older than I am. So, sought out guidance from him a lot. And, we never really worked together. He's helped me get jobs before when I was in my teenage years and finishing up high school. But, it was one of those things where that foundation of having a strong relationship growing up and trusting him and him trusting me was okay, let's see, what this is about, and let's see if we can maybe work something together. We thought perhaps we could go into business together because, in real estate, you can create teams.
Right.
And my mom was always really pushing me as well. She's see what my brother was doing. He's you got to get into this business too. You got to do this.
Right.
And so finally, when I did, it was good. It was good. He really guided me and trained me in those early years, in the first year and a bit. But of course, circumstances changes for everybody in their life, and he ended up moving to Alberta.
Oh yeah.
So I was here all alone trying to figure out real estate, and it was good. It was a challenge. It was a lot to learn, and he was still there, but again, with family and such, it's hard to and being in a different province too, it kind of gets difficult, right?
Yeah.
Have you guys run into any challenges working together? Do you guys have different styles?
Absolutely. So about year 2 after my first cycle of relicensing, I realized that obviously we operate very, very differently in
Mhm.
the way our business runs. And I think that, there was a challenging time for both of us where I had to decide if I wanted to move away from my brother's business and go to business in my own and try to really figure out, my process, what works for me, how I want to approach all my clients and conduct my business. And that's not to take anything away from him. It's just very different styles.
Mhm.
And so, I made the tough decision and it was really hard for our relationship. Like the
Oh,
honest
really?
truth was, he took that personally, of
Mm.
course, because he always envisioned us working together from start to the end and really doing this together. And I had to do that my own path. But 4 years later, we joined back
Mhm.
again,
Oh, okay.
right?
Oh,
Okay.
So it
There's that
was
it's full
song
circle.
Reunited, right?
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I just needed the wings to fly,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I needed him to trust that I could find that. And
Mhm.
then when things sort of worked itself out, we started working together again and we created our own real estate team about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now. So
Mhm. So what were the major differences between you and your brother and how that
I'm really into like I'm really into like the documentation needs to be like
Mhm.
great. I'm really into like how we like conduct and onboard our clients.
Mhm.
So I had a process, I had a system
Mhm.
for the way things were to be done. And with my brother, he's very much more like relaxed. He's very much more like, I just want to, shake hands, do deals on handshakes
Mhm.
and get things going. And obviously in this business now, as you can see, like with the, prices of homes, with the regulations that are in place, it's more important than ever to be on top of that, having a system and having a procedure for the whole business
Mhm.
that keeps you in a safe spot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how have you found your way around together, knowing that you have both different types of strengths?
Yeah. So honestly, it's really about first and foremost establishing that communication and being really honest with each other.
Mhm.
I think that it's hard with family because you know you it is a little personal, right? It is a
Mhm.
little
Mhm.
personal. But I
It's very
also
personal. It's not a little personal.
yeah. But I
Mhm.
also believe that like family, you should be able to be honest with each other
Mhm.
in those difficult moments. So, we talked about what our strengths and weaknesses were and how we can then utilize each of those and lean on each other for each of those. So,
Mhm.
really like his ability to go out there to lead gen to get the clients into the funnel, that's
Mhm.
his real strong suit. And for me, it was really about like establishing those processes and procedures and making sure that like we're consistent on both sides of the table.
Mhm.
That way the customer experience is consistent throughout as well.
That's incredible. I think there's just a lot of different family businesses and family structures in real estate, and it seems to be kind of a tradition in our industry for brother and sister teams, or brother and brother teams, or mother and son teams, and some of those have been phenomenally successful. But then I've also seen some of those blow up and like being a catastrophe.
Mhm.
And so, like, how do you balance between your family relationship and your business relationship?
Great question. And you know, I think I see the two almost as if like we're everything is family and we're holding ourselves honest and accountable to each other.
Hmm.
I think one of the hardest things for myself and for my brother is to really be able to set aside our egos, right? And say, hey, have you considered looking at this from a perspective here? Not to say that what you're doing is not correct and not to say what I think is right, but also just kind of looking at it from different lenses, different perspectives.
Hmm.
And he's been in this business now for I think about 14 years. So he's learned it a certain way
Hmm.
and it's a little bit more challenging for him to make those adjustments. Whereas like I feel like I can make those changes and adjustments a lot more seamless. And
Hmm.
so being able to approach him, like being the guinea pig, making those changes, seeing how they work, and then reporting almost back to him and saying, hey, I think we can try something like this. that's kind of how we operate our relationship. Like it still feels like family, but it's setting aside our egos.
Have you
Oh,
ever
good.
encountered a situation where he says, "I'm the big brother. You have to listen to
Yeah.
me. I'm right."
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that was when that was really like in that first
I'm going to ask you the same question.
Right.
that was really in our first like year and a half, because I didn't know anything else about real
Mhm.
estate. I only knew what he knew. And there were times where he would say like, this is you just got to do it this way. And I'm always the type that's like, I get we have to do it this way, but why do we have to do this way? Help me understand that so that I can then apply it and have the conversations with honesty and truth when I'm speaking to a client, right? I'm not
Mhm.
just instructing them to do something because they have to do it. So yeah, absolutely. It was we've had those moments for sure.
And Michael, have you pulled that card?
So yeah, I've worked in a family business
Right.
for, I think the better part of 18 or 19 years in real estate. So I think we made every error and mistake you can possibly make about running a family business, making it too personal, getting egos involved. I'm older. I've been in the business longer, like conversations and like, just do what I say, just shut up, like type of situations. And so, we've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, but ultimately, I think the longest we've ever not worked together. This is my sister Arlene and I, who's been on the podcast, my partner in real estate. I think was like 1 month.
Oh.
so like we had 1 month where we didn't work together, and it was terrible for me. She was doing fine, but so I got her back in. Yeah, it's something that it's really unique because everyone's a bit different, but I really have this affinity towards siblings because, in my experience at least, siblings get a journey with you your whole kind of like trajectory of life. They're your peer group, instilled peer group through every major life change that you go through. And so or you can have like childhood friends or something like that, or, it's something that they really know like how to like piss you off, but they also know like everything about you. So it's an interesting dynamic for sure to be able to work with family members. I'm really fortunate to be able to do so, and we're very fortunate to be able to have each other. That's absolutely sure, and I'm sure you feel the same way about your brother. But let's focus on Mike.
Wait, you guys both have really strong team names, by the way, and you just
Okay.
changed yours.
Yes.
And his initials is YVR,
Oh, really?
right?
Yeah, it took some time to kind of get to that point, but yeah, we're happy with the YVR group.
Yeah.
Yes.
It makes
Yes.
sense.
Yeah. So your team is the YVR group.
We're the YVR group. Our team name is actually registered as Yeung Vancouver Realty Group,
Oh, nice.
but our logo is YVR GRP.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I recently changed my team name from the very self-centered Michael Yu Real Estate Group.
So are 90% of the team names.
Yeah. So I am an egomaniac, but no. So I recently changed my team name from the Michael Yu Real Estate Group to the Vancouver Real Estate Team.
Which I'm surprised was still available.
Yeah.
So was I. And it's not like I registered it like eons ago or whatever, but I just checked in with the BCFSA and I registered the website for just to make sure that it was available, and for some miraculous reason it was. So we recently changed that over starting this year in 2025, and yeah, it's been going fairly well. Like it's been going pretty well. Yeah. So a little bit of a different resale team aspect. Yeah.
Mhm. How big is your team, Michael?
There's only two of us
Yeah.
essentially on that team.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's brothers duo. So not as big as some of the other teams out there, but hopefully as we move along, we will be able to add more to that and just provide that full service.
My advice is just to add slowly.
Right.
Mhm.
And know how to scale your business, because when I find myself hiring a lot of agents and I onboard them because of their enthusiasm,
Mhm.
but they're actually not really ready to be on a team. Have you ever experienced that?
Absolutely. I think just developing your team and your structure is something that requires a lot of careful planning and a lot of intention. And I think it's you're working every day with these people. Like these people are people that you're gonna see maybe more than your family in many cases. So
Mhm.
there has to be a level of comfort, and so you want to be really intentional there. So absolutely, and yeah, I've made every mistake under the sun with team building and everything like that. And I think ultimately it's really being very intentional in crafting the team structure and kind of knowing the next like what the next 3 months, 6 months, year is going to be for your
Mhm.
business, and making sure that you pay attention to your metrics, I think is very important
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
But let's recenter and focus on Mike here. So obviously now, working is in resale for several years. So what are the things you learned outside of real estate that you bring to your real estate practice now? Like, so through the restaurant business, through your education and yeah.
Yeah, great question. I think, the one that really sticks out for me and the one that I think has helped my real estate business a lot, and this one's going to be sound really unexpected, is actually my acting training.
Mm.
So I went through some acting training, did some acting for about, well, now it's 11 years. So,
Hmm.
and through that, we did a lot of, self work. So a lot of like understanding where your emotions are and your traumas, and learning how to listen when you're in that scene with another actor,
Hmm.
and really like that ability to listen, to like look at somebody and see their little nuances, like their little tells, has been really helpful when speaking with clients,
Hmm.
right? So you're really able to be present, be grounded, really hear what the client is looking for, what their needs and wants are,
Hmm.
and what their concerns are, but also really address them from a sincere, like honest, like integrity
Hmm.
approach. And so that was really one of the big things has really helped me in real estate. And then of course going through BCIT and taking the business course, like you really learn about time management. But even then, I don't think it really prepares you for how much time management you really need and learn when you're in the trenches of real estate, right?
Mhm.
So, can you bring me back to the acting thing? Because I'm very curious about this.
Yeah.
So, what kind of self work was it? Was it how did that look like?
Absolutely. So, for example, there's a course called or a class called Voice and Body. So, in
Mm,
Voice and Body, you're really focusing on, like meditation. You're really focused on like finding your voice, understanding like where you hold certain traumas from your life. And traumas can be anything. It doesn't have to be physical traumas. It can be emotional traumas.
mhm,
It can be life altering events, experiences, and from that, you really start to break down this like armor that we've built over the years and years of like going through life,
Mhm.
right? And once you get that out of your system, like everything feels a lot more free, everything feels a lot more sincere, um, with when you're communicating and you're working with people. And this business is all about working with people. So that's one example. Another example is like in scene study, it's really the ability to listen and really the ability to understand what's happening in the specific scene that you're working on. And when you are practicing the lines, when you're rehearsing the lines with somebody else,
mm,
eventually you already can predict what the next words are going to come out from what's happening in the scene. So I could sit and watch some movies, and if you're really listening, you'll repeat, you'll say in advance like what the response would be from someone on the screen, and it happens, and you're like, huh, like I feel that, I sense
mhm.
that, I heard you, I can feel that. So
So, what was something?
Wow.
If I don't want to get too personal
sure.
here, Mike, and if you don't want to, but like, what's something you like had to let go of or had to overcome?
Yeah, I think the toughest thing, and I do remember this, is um, in the voice and body. I really found myself holding on to a lot of anger, and so what ends up happening is I try to avoid conflicts a lot. It makes me super emotional. I get really like I don't know, teary or whatever you want to call it. And that's hard for me. And understanding what triggers that and understanding how that affects me, that's the kind of work that's really allowed me to be able to not be affected so much by it anymore because I understand where it comes from and I understand how it changes my mood and such. So that's an example of
Mm.
of some voice and body work, and where I realized that there, like, a lot of the trauma and a lot of the stuff I was carrying in my shoulders,
Mm.
and they can see that. Like, these acting coaches that do this for a living, like, they can look at you while you're standing there and say, "What's going on there in your shoulder? What's happening? Why
Mhm.
are you hesitating? Let it out. Like, talk to us. Like, let it go." And so it's hard. It's not easy work, and I have so much, like, going through it. You have so much respect for these actors who do this for a living, and it's not easy. It's why they are award winning, because they go through this for the last 20 plus years.
Mhm.
I can imagine when you're working with agents and clients that they feel really heard and understood because you're giving that time and curiosity to them of exploring like what they're feeling as they're going through the motions of buying, as they're working on a deal. And so have you applied some of the tools to your everyday like interactions with some of your clients and friends right now, and agents?
Yeah, I think more so these past few years, and as we move forward in what our real estate landscape looks like, is really that being heard and being understood, and just, you got to show that you're in it with them as well, and that you get that. Like, to some, especially a first time home buyer, like, $5,000 savings, it might not sound like a lot to some people, when you're thinking about how high the prices of homes have become in this province. But, like, to that first time home buyer, that's like legal fees plus, like, moving fees and
Mhm.
especially, and when we can like really hear that and help them with those differences, like, that's where they feel like, okay, I can trust this person. This person was listening to my needs, and it didn't sound ridiculous,
Mhm.
and that's, just some of the lessons that I try to give back to those other agents, the newer ones that are starting out,
Mhm.
because they're not always sure how to navigate it.
Sure.
But it's really like, let's just listen and show that you're, really paying attention to what they want, and then asking for that in some way.
Mhm.
Right. So, just speaking about that, there's been obviously quite an evolution for you, Michael, in different varying industries, acting and service industry, and then being effectively like a assistant for your brother for a time being, then being an independent agent, working solo as an agent, creating a real estate team, and then now there's an evolution to your role now, which is obviously
Yeah.
taking a leadership role. And I don't know, Jenny or Michael, you want to kind of
Yeah. So,
introduce?
okay, funny enough, we had actually met way before we started working together.
Okay.
So I have a friend who is his girlfriend.
Oh,
And
okay.
so we were going out for dinner, and I think afterwards we were standing outside of the restaurant. We were celebrating our mutual friend's birthday, and we just started chatting as
Hmm.
we were standing around after eating dinner, and just realized that he's also a realtor.
Hmm.
And at that time, I think maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago,
3 years ago.
you were saying that you were studying to get your managing broker license, and didn't really think too much of it, but I felt there was a good, like, friendly energy. Like, there was just very easy to talk to.
Hmm.
And so he's always been back in my mind of like, okay, maybe, and that time I hadn't even opened the brokerage yet.
Hmm.
But I was like, oh, this is, such a nice realtor. Hopefully I get to do a deal one day with him. So fast forward to maybe like fall last year.
Correct.
I was in search of having someone join the management team, and his name just kept coming up, just energetically wise.
Hmm.
And in the universe, I was like, okay, who can I call in to work alongside me to build this team, to build a brokerage? And I had spoken to a couple of agents at his office, and they brought up his name
Hmm.
too. So I was like, okay, there's something going on here. So that's why I reached out to him again. I got permission from his girlfriend just to be like,
Right.
I just want to let you know I'm good.
Yeah.
Is it okay that I
So
can?
you got her blessing.
Yeah, got her blessing.
Yeah, right.
She gave me permission, and then
Right.
we started chatting after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So, do you want to introduce Michael's role at the brokerage?
Yeah, so it was really important that we, as our brokerage was growing with a number of agents,
Mm-hmm.
that they would be getting the support that they needed.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
having a leader like Michael come on board, it was really necessary for someone to, and I think he has so many strengths that I don't have. Like I have lots of areas of improvement. And what he brings on to the team is the compliance side,
Mm-hmm.
and again, training, helping me with training, and just really interacting and engaging with the agents.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to expand on your role? And
Yeah, I mean, I'm so fortunate and thankful that I get to do this now, and I've transitioned into an associate broker role. And about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was in my second renewal of my license,
Mm-hmm.
and found my footing in real estate. Really figured out how to keep a consistent business. And one of the things that I always paid attention to was how our profession is not always seen in a positive way
Mm.
in our province, but perhaps across the industry in general. And I love real estate. I love what we get to do. I have so much respect for it. But when I hear that, I feel like it stings, right? You're like, oh,
Mm.
like why can't we just be better in
Mm-hmm.
a sense? And so I was thinking that, well, if I can make an impact with each interaction, whether that's with an agent or whether that's with my clients, and change that perception, then I think I could put that into being an associate broker, managing broker. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know if owning a brokerage or anything was kind of what I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew that that would be the path to make that small difference. And things don't happen all of a sudden overnight. It takes these small changes. And so the managing broker at my previous brokerage, she is amazing. She's
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal. Connie Buna, I'm
Right.
sure you've
Mhm.
met her before and done
We
some
love Connie.
transactions.
Mhm.
And Roland.
She really, yeah, she like was to me what a managing broker at that time that I knew should be like. And
Mhm.
she was able to make anything that was uncertain like very clear, like whether it was anything to do with compliance, rules, regulations. And that inspired me. That inspired me to be like, I have so much respect for her as an agent. If I can if I can replicate that, then I can hopefully make an impact with other agents, right? So that's what led me down the path. And thinking back as well, in all the other professions and careers that I had, I was always tapped on the shoulder to be a manager of some sort, right? I never thought I was a manager. I never saw myself as that, but throughout the years and the years of all those different jobs was like, hey, Michael, we think you'd be a great manager. Would you
Mhm.
like consider it? And I just sure gave it a shot. Now that I'm in real estate, now that I love what I do, I thought back and I was like, what are the things that people always thought about me? And I said,
Mhm.
maybe I got to bet on myself too. Maybe this is what I need
Yeah.
to follow. And so I was like, I'm going to do it. We are growing the agent count within the province, but at the same time, there's not that managing broker, associate broker um, numbers that are keeping up with the agent counts as well. So
Mhm.
that guidance with all the regulations that are coming down, it's more important than ever to be able to provide that oversight for those agents so that they can have positive impacts in our society as well and community.
Mhm.
These executives or managers saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself. What was that? Why didn't you see it in yourself?
I don't know. Like to be completely honest, I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe a lack of confidence, right? Trying to figure things out. And to them, they saw that I was able to really communicate with people well and work with people well. I was able to convey messages and really like just bring things together from that perspective. And then when I first became a manager many years ago in retail, I was not good at it. I'm going to be completely
Mhm.
honest. I was I was probably one of the worst that some would say, and I give a lot of credit to those sales associates who pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Michael, we're not happy. We think that things could be handled differently, and the way you're approaching it is not working." And I didn't know anything because I was just put into this position.
Mhm.
But I really, when I think back, they gave me the chance to better myself
Mhm.
and to work better in that position. And so if it wasn't for that, I don't think I'd be where I am today.
Mhm.
But it is learning. And, similar to what you said before, Michael, it's like you've made, like, we make a lot of mistakes along the way, but
Mhm.
it's how you, pick yourself back up and try and adapt and change to really find that path.
Mhm. Well, it's been a few months since Michael has joined our brokerage, and it's been an amazing, amazing
Mm.
addition to our family. I would say he's immersed in it. He's natural, very natural at it. And I get so many compliments from our agents and staff being able to approach him with any situation, and he's able to articulate and communicate, give a different perspective for them to be able to give really great advice to their clients.
Yeah, there's something special happening at Oakwyn Northwest, actually. Like, there's like every
Yes.
time I go into the office and there's a special energy, the people are just so dialed in and such great representatives of what our industry should be like. I'm really just, I'm so happy that, adding another really great element to the leadership team at Oakland Northwest. Michael, I always like to ask people like why they're doing what they're doing, and then obviously seeing the public's perception of agents and having that really impact you and really want to do something, actively do something, not just complain about it, but actually do something to really change the trajectory of what that looks like. So, what would be some of your like tangible goals that you have as a leader at Oakland Northwest, as the associate broker supporting the agents? Like, what would be some things that you want to impart or like practically shift and change?
Yeah, I think great question. Right off the top for me, it's changing the perception on why, like the rules and regulations that come down is changing that perception with agents of like, oh, why do we have to do it this way now? Like, why is there so many things? Yes, there's a lot more like oversight and BCFSA, really making sure that we're following the rules and we're really conducting our business well. And for me, it's if I can help the agents understand that this is like maybe they don't get it right all the time, right? But if we can kind of change the way we're thinking about that, change is coming, change has to happen. We need to embrace the change, try to work through it, and then provide that feedback so that perhaps it can be improved, or maybe they revert back to
Hmm.
to something and it
Mhm.
wasn't working. But it's that mindset of, we're gonna do it this way, and that's the only way I know how to do it.
Hmm.
And then change happens, and then being like resistant to it,
Right.
that hurts you and that prevents growth as well. And so for me, I think one of the big things is trying to change the way we receive information
Hmm.
and then be able to adapt and move forward with it and then provide that feedback.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was really impressed last week. I mean, at our brokerage, we've layered on a couple more documentations that
Hmm.
a couple of agents have been resistant to, and I'm really proud that we're just staying on top of things.
Hmm.
A couple agents have approached us and asked us why we were adding these documents to the workflow, and I was sitting in the room, and he really provided a good perspective on how it's going to protect the agent's business, and they understood why.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was just really impressed with that approach of getting them to understand that what we're doing is helping you grow your business, but also nurture it and prevent anything that may happen.
What's interesting is like, so my girlfriend, she works in law,
Hmm.
and she's paralegal, and so we constantly like are looking at different cases online. This is what we do on our spare time. So it's like nothing
Wow.
like
That's a Friday night,
yeah, but
over wine.
That's sexy.
I know. It's so ridiculous. But one thing that like I've noticed and we talk about is the reasonable person test. Everything that happens in court, anytime a judge looks at it, is like they always compare things to like what would the reasonable person do? And in real estate, they look at things in two things. What would the reasonable person do, like a client? And then also as agents, like they're held to a much higher standard.
Mhm.
So it's for me to, like Jenny had mentioned, to explain and help other agents understand that we have to understand how the clients are looking at this and how the courts may look at this, how the perception is when, something happens, something goes wrong, and how we can prevent that and get ahead of it so that we're protecting our businesses instead of just, letting mistakes happen or letting things slide.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard a number of stories of how agents have used some of these new regulations and these new forms and disclosures as actually opportunities to differentiate
Yeah.
themselves.
Mhm.
So I have a story from one of our agents. They might have been from your office. I can't like just trying to pinpoint their name, but so basically, they were interviewing for a listing. So they were interviewing against two other agents that were seasoned and veteran agents. One of the first things that our agent did was to present the disclosure of representing trading services form to their client. And just show their what they would expect in a client relationship, and they're like, and they asked like the other agents didn't do this. Why are we doing this? And that agent explained that we do things by the book at Oakwyn. We really do respect the rules of the BCFSA and our regulating body. We want to really elevate standards, and we really want you to understand what fiduciary duties are and what it's like to have a client relationship. And immediately upon them saying we do things by the book, they won that listing.
Mm.
So they used it as a
Mm.
differentiator, they might have been from your office.
Sounds like
Yeah,
it.
a differentiator in a way to create an opportunity to really, just to embrace those changes that are going to be not only to protect your business, but then to inform the public a bit better. So just to increase those standards. So like, when a lot of these new forms are being introduced, we're not resistant to those. Typically at Oakwyn, we really want to elevate those standards and really try to help our agents to understand the intention behind it is to always inform the clients, and to develop a greater and deeper relationship with them to understand the brevity of their decision of what they're doing. It's not an impediment, but really just a differentiator in service and information quality. So I think that that's a big thing that our associate broker and managing broker team do with our agents is to explain the reasoning why, so that our agents can take advantages out in the field to be able to inform the public a little bit better. So speaking of some of these kind of disclosures and everything, what do you see as some of the major challenges facing realtors today?
I think obviously the first one on the top of everybody's list is really housing affordability in our city, in our province. And how do we then navigate those conversations with our clients about housing affordability and how they can either move in, whether it's a first time home buyer? We know that's a really big struggle these days. How they can work towards getting into their first home,
Mhm.
or how someone can work, if they're growing a family, getting to that next home, with all the different constantly changing market forces that are out there. I think first and foremost, that's the one that we have to rehearse and just be informed by staying up to date, is
Mhm.
housing affordability, and how we can help with in our community as well. What are some things that we can do, whether that's hosting seminars or, doing something at a community center, like, with the general public, they can come in, maybe it's an info session,
Mhm.
little ways that we can be of service and navigate them through this new kind of era of real estate.
Right. Yeah. I think, we're caught in a little bit of our bubble or an ecosystem here. This housing crisis issue is a global issue
Yep.
in a lot of markets, especially major markets in all over the world. So we're not kind of the
Right.
only person that's in this realm. And I feel like this is me on a soapbox here, but uh, but when it comes to housing affordability and that journey and being able to be on a path to being able to secure your own residence, it's so incredibly valuable I believe, this is my own thoughts, not the thoughts of Oakwyn or any of its subsidiaries. I
Disclaimer.
Yeah, I feel that a person's path to homeownership or homeownership should be like even a human right. Like it should be
Right.
something that
Everyone deserves a
everyone
home.
deserves a
Mhm.
home. I started with a small condo in Richmond, BC that I could just barely afford, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made in my entire life. Besides being a realtor and meeting my wife and everything, buying real estate has been amongst the best vehicles in my life to be able to provide security and for my family. So I feel that everyone should be able to participate in that, and you know I think maybe it's an adjustment of expectations, or potentially it's a just like Michael was saying, like an educational opportunity for people to get understanding what the programs are, like what's CMHC, like, how the difference between renting versus owning, and, that the mortgage payment isn't purely just interest, it's also principal, and trying to make it less predatory but more transformational in a sense of these educational opportunities. So I'm totally on the same page with you.
I
Yeah.
just don't know if we're able to solve the housing affordability until we actually target housing availability,
Hmm.
because we just don't build it fast enough. And especially with presale projects being pushed back now, I mean, we need over 1 million homes to actually be affordable in
Hmm.
an affordable city. So if there's less presales now being built, we're still going to be in a position where there's way more demand than there is supply,
Hmm.
and the affordability will never get resolved. And so all these red tapes and processes that take forever. I mean, in Europe and China, they're building homes way faster than we can even build a car or whatever.
Hmm.
So I think the issue is that we need better ways to build maybe modular homes, build taller buildings,
Hmm.
and maybe it just has to be smaller square footage to bring down that affordability.
Hmm. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, what pains my heart is really when I talk to young adults, like people who are wanting to get into the market. It doesn't have to be young, it could be at any age, right? Like they're trying to get into the market, but they feel so demoralized and deflated that they're willing to leave the city that they grew up in to
Hmm.
move to another city just to be able to have housing. Like
Yeah.
that's crushing because I grew up in Vancouver, like in the lower mainland. I love this city. We are so lucky to live here. But when I hear my friends are like, yeah, I think we have to move, like I want to do everything I can. And so really coming from education, coming from a place of like, let's sit down, let's plan this, help you plan out, and let's see if there is a viable option
Hmm.
and we can make it work. And if all, resources are tapped out and it doesn't make sense, let's look at a different plan. But
Hmm.
really, like that's kind of how I feel about it. And
Right.
that's really what I want to try to
Yeah.
at least help.
Yeah, from a boots on the ground perspective, I fully agree with you. Just exploring your options and trying to help people to understand what climbing a property ladder looks like. Because I feel like a lot of people have this expectation they're going to be in a 3-bedroom rancher, like for the kind of the nuclear family home, you know. Post-war bungalow, like in the central location. So I think just trying to reframe that expectation from a micro level to just help people to understand that aspect. But then from a macro level for housing policies, this is again another soapbox thing. I'm very concerned about the elimination of the middle class through the housing policies provincially, being encouraging of these rental 100 projects and not having a clear pathway for people to be able to build equity and wealth through real estate purchases of stratified properties, which is concerning. I think that it's going to shrink the middle class quite substantially because the middle class primarily holds most of their wealth in real estate assets, and by virtue of them being just kind of entering into a forever renter class, that may impact their longevity in the future. So I'm a bit of a concerned of this, like, separation of a wealth gap between the haves and the have-nots. Whereas I feel like, I know people complain about the micro condos that are 300 square feet, but, you know, I think that is that is a just a entry point into climbing a property ladder and kind of moving through the different phases of your family. So and kind of going from there. So I have some concern with the housing policies just generally, and just really working towards what we could do about that. And everyone has their different philosophies of how to do that through advocacy and through and that's kind of what we do from our perspective as agents to encourage people to participate in the real estate investment and owning the ownership of properties is something that we encourage people to do, which is kind of exciting to do on a day-to-day basis. But I think it's not a problem that we're going to solve today in this windowless studio. But we're really excited to have you as a part of the Oakwyn team, Mike, and we're excited to kind of continue to work with you and see your role evolve. Any kind of interesting or final thoughts for us before we conclude?
Yeah. For those who are thinking about real estate as a career, I'll just touch on that. It's an amazing career, and it
Yes, it
can
is.
be quite an amazing career. But the most important thing is getting into it for the right reasons,
Mhm.
right? And similar to, honestly, as acting, right? It's like, I think we think about, oh, I'm going to get into acting because I can make tons of money in it. And great, I'm going to be an A-list actor. That's not true. It doesn't happen that fast. It doesn't happen that quickly. Everybody you see that has won an Oscar essentially has been doing it for 20 years. And so similar to real estate is, you want to get into it for the right reasons, is to help people, to hopefully help be a pillar in solving some kind of issue within your community. The best way to also do that before getting into real estate is really reaching out to leaders within the community. So, book that coffee meeting with like a Michael or a Jenny and, really pick their brains about real estate as a career, because speaking to them, understanding what goes in and day out in this profession may be the reason you decide not to get into it because it just doesn't work out or it's not what you want. But also it could be the thing where you're like, hey, this actually really sounds exciting. And I have a better understanding of it going into real estate versus just getting your license after, passing an exam. And then next thing you know, you're trying to tread water here in this business. So those are my final thoughts. Thank you so much for having me on and being a part of this. It's really been great.
Well, thank you so much for listening to the Oakwyn podcast. Thank you, Jenny, for co-hosting today.
Thank you.
I have to comment on Jenny for a quick sec.
Oh no.
You have you have the smoothest voice. Like you have like an ASMR voice. So, and it's so like anyways.
I've made it a career after this podcast. I now do voiceovers.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Because of this compliment. Yeah.
Well, I would listen to anything that you're on for sure. Thank you so much for listening to the Oakwyn podcast with Michael and Jenny. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please rate it 5 out of 5 on the podcast platform you're listening to it on. And if you're interested in learning more about Oakwyn, go to oakwyn.com/join, type in the message box Jenny and Michael, and you'll receive a free piece of mystery swag when you meet one of our leaders. Thank you so much.